Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is Tom and today I'm joined by Fantasy Football Scout's deputy editor and five-time top 1k finisher, Tom Freeman. Tom, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks, Tom. Already looking forward to Game Week 3. I think we've both made our transfers early this week, like a lot of people, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, all good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Enjoying these team selection videos. Did general yesterday, so do check that out on the channel if you haven't seen that already. We also discussed NKUNKU and Barco replacements as well. And in the NKUNKU section, there's someone that featured quite heavily, Morgan Rogers. Tom's a Villa fan, so we will discuss Aston Villa in a little bit of depth in just a second. But first of all, we will go to Tom's Game Week 2 team. So like the video, make sure you're subscribed. And if you're listening on the podcast, please do turn on your automatic downloads because it really helps us out. Cool. So for the podcast listeners, I've just brought up Tom's Game Week 2 result, which was 77 points. I'll just quickly read it out for the podcast. You had Henderson in goal with a clean sweep at the back with Trent, Porro and Robinson getting 6, 6 and 7. Saka, NKUNKU, Eze and Smith Rowe in the midfield. Smith Rowe the highlight there with 10. And then up front, you captained Haaland for 34 and then had Isak and Muniz's blanks. And you kept Quansah as well. You're currently your third sub. So how did you feel about that, Tom? It was a good week on paper, but seeing the triple captains kind of put it into perspective for me a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. Yeah, I didn't even really think about the triple captain much. I've never really played it early in the season, and I know the dynamic will change a bit this year with less doubles, but we don't know what's to come. And so I didn't really think that one through. It was always going to be my captain, but never the triple captain. But apart from that, yeah, it was okay. Solanke to Muniz was my transfer. That was forced upon me on Friday with the Solanke injury, which wasn't ideal. We were just talking before we came on that had Hall potential, that Everton fixture for him, didn't they? So we go into the season with great ideas that we're going to rack up these transfers, but sometimes you've just got to react to problems in your team, haven't you? Which is what happened for me.
Yeah, definitely. How did you feel about Muniz? Because I put a tweet out yesterday saying no one's had more shots in the box than him. You keeping the
Yeah.
faith?
Yeah, I mean, he was brought in. I think I'm going to wild card in 6, so he was brought in for 4 game weeks, and the run for Fulham is nice. They've still got Ipswich, and then they've got a couple of home games against West Ham and Newcastle. I think he had 7 shots at the weekend, didn't he? So he's clearly getting into shooting good shooting opportunities and positions. He feels like a bit of a confidence striker to me, whereas if he gets one, he might go on a bit of a run. So I'm just hopeful that that'll come at Ipswich and then he can kind of kick on for the next couple of weeks after that.
Yeah, definitely. And then defensively, very strong. Couple of big hitters. Trent. It must be good to have Trent in there.
Yeah, he's looking good, isn't he? I did the scout notes on Sunday and kind of tapped into those slot quotes after the game that he doesn't want to play him in the middle as much. He wants him to be crossing from out wide. So it feels like we might get a bit of that overlapping Trent from old back. And Robertson looked good, really good as well on the left. So, yeah, quite a lot to be excited about. I know they've had a couple of easier fixtures, Liverpool, but I think they've looked good so far, very controlled. And I don't own Salah, but I have plans to bring him in, which we'll talk about when we come onto my team Game Week 3.
Yeah, definitely. Trent is one player that I really, really want but can't quite get. And
Mm,
then
okay.
finally, obviously, NKUNKU, the big disappointment there. We'll come onto your transfer in a minute, but I guess
Yeah.
is that curtains for him in your eyes?
Yeah, he's already gone. I mean, it's I knew he was a risk before we started the season, but I think because I didn't start with like a £4 million defender or anything like that, so I was happy to take one or two risks with Nkunku being one, Kwanzaa probably the next, and both have failed spectacularly. But he's got to go. It's that, he might play, he's going to play games, isn't he, Tom? As a Chelsea fan, he's going to start games, but it's just that week to week uncertainty now, which for me is a bit of a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem, and I say this having moved him on. I've already moved him on,
Mm,
but it wouldn't overly shock me if he started Game Week 3. If Pedro Neto
yeah.
starts on Thursday, Maresca said he can't play more than one game in a week at the minute. And Mudryk, Mudryk's not good enough. I was shocked he
Yeah.
started at the weekend, but
Mm.
it wouldn't shock me if NKUNKU started. So if you're watching and you do have him and you can't move him out, I don't think it's the worst thing, especially if Pedro Neto's minutes are high on Thursday. Um,
Yeah, I think Mudryk came off at half time, didn't he, as well at
yeah,
Molineux, didn't he? I think
yeah,
so. Yeah, he clearly underwhelmed, didn't he? So yeah, again, it wouldn't surprise me, but it's just the player I bought in enables some other things for my team. So it was kind of a move looking at the bigger picture, I suppose.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's very frustrating. Like you said about Solanke, missed out on 4 goals, and Kunku missed out on 6 goals.
I
Yeah,
know.
so what could
Yeah.
have been? But
Mm.
yeah, so 77 points, green arrow for yourself. 2 game weeks in, 3 million. It's all very close. So yeah,
Yeah.
onwards.
Early days.
Cool. So we will now move on to. We're just going to discuss the fixtures a little bit, looking ahead
Okay.
game weeks 3 to 7 for the podcast listeners. I've brought up the ticker on the screen at the top. Aston Villa with Leicester, Everton, Wolves, Ipswich, and Man United in their next 5. They're followed by Ipswich, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Everton. And then at the bottom, there's some quite big teams actually. Spurs are at the bottom with Newcastle, Arsenal, Brentford, Man United, and Brighton. Brighton are second bottom, then Man City third bottom, although the next 2 aren't awful.
Yeah.
And then Arsenal sort of middle of the road. Looks a little bit rougher after this week, and then they got 2 good games in 6 and 7. So we'll focus on Villa firstly because you're obviously a Villa fan. You're at the game on
Mm.
Saturday. So yeah, how are you feeling about Villa in general? Like a little bit of a tough start. No, you didn't. You won in game
Yeah.
week 1, sorry, but you lost in game week 2.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's been positive. Not to discredit Arsenal, but I think it could have easily gone our way on Saturday. I think it was quite finely poised, that match. I think the shape of our team looked good out of possession. I think that we, as a Konza owner, I was kind of encouraged by that because we've got this new midfield too in Onana and Tielemans. So a big departure from last year when it was Louise and Kamara for the first part of the season anyway. And I guess the game was kind of defined by those two big misses, weren't they? Both by Watkins. He hasn't had a pre-season after the Euros, and he's coming off a bit early. He's still getting up to speed, but I always think if he's in the right places, the goals will come. I think Emery said as much after. So if you're eyeing him up for this run, which I think a lot of people are, I wouldn't have any worries about that at all. I'd bring him in
Yeah,
without even overthinking that. I think that he will score against these teams. You've got to remember who he's up against at the weekend as well. Arsenal, best defence in Europe, aren't they? So I came out from that game and I was with my son, and we'd lost 2-0, but we were both kind of proud of the team and felt encouraged from an FPL perspective about what we can do in the next few weeks. So
yeah. I mean, there's a few things with Watkins. Obviously, last year he didn't score till game week 6, so he's
he
potentially
didn't.
a slow starter. And he's coming off at 65, which is not ideal.
Yes.
But on the flip side, he obviously had 2 massive chances, which you'd back him to put them away. Are you slightly concerned about minutes? Is Duran better this year, or is it literally just because we're still in Watkins' pre-season?
I think it's so reduced because of the fact he didn't have that pre-season. He didn't feature at all for us, even in the final friendly against Dortmund. So I think that, yes, I think his minutes with Duran, if he is going to stay, we'll find out for sure on Friday when the window closes. But it looks as though he is going to. I do think earlier subs, because of the Champions League coming up, the first one is in between game weeks 4 and 5. I think 75, 80 minutes, we might see Watkins coming off more. I know that we played Conference League last year, but Watkins had his minutes managed in the group stage with that. He didn't play every game, whereas with Champions League, he's pretty much going to be a 90-minute man in that, I think. So I think that, yeah, you might not get those full 90s out of Watkins, but you should get enough time with 75, 80 minutes for him to do some damage, given the opposition. With the fixtures are just brilliant. With Leicester and then the 2 home games against 2 teams who look really shaky at the back right now, Everton and Wolves.
Yeah, definitely. We'll come on to Rodgers in a minute, but first, a couple of questions about your new right back. Is it pronounced
Yeah.
Nadalkovic? And secondly, is he expected to start? Because he's obviously only 4 million and there'll be a lot of people out there with Barco.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure about the pronunciation. That's how I say it, but I don't actually know if that is Correct. I think there was a YouTube video doing the rounds the other day of all the Villa players pronouncing their names, so maybe you should go and have a watch of that. But we'll go with Nedeljkovic for now, and then if somebody in the chat disagrees, I'm sure they will flag it. So yeah, so basically, Cash came off in game week 1 at West Ham, and then he started. We weren't too sure when the lineups were coming out if he was going to play game week 2. He did, but he only lasted, I don't know, what was it, like 17 or 18 minutes or something like that, and he came off hamstring injury. He's going to be out for a month. So a lot of people have said, well, Konsa could shift to right back, but Emery actually came out after the game and said Konsa isn't going to play at right back in the immediate future. We've changed the way we build up. He wants Konsa in the centre alongside Pau Torres, which opens the door for Nedeljkovic to start now. He's raw. Like watching him on Saturday, he was thrown in at the deep end. He's up against Martinelli, who is absolutely rapid, and he was. I thought he struggled with his positioning a little bit. But he's what, 20 years old. He's young. That's going to happen. And Emre clearly believes in him. So I think he's next in line to start. The only thing I'd be wary about is the transfer window. We're massively linked with GW3, who played for the Dutch at the Euros. If he comes in, then obviously there's going to be a bedding in period, isn't there? But you've got an international break. So I'm sure Nedeljkovic, regardless of what happens in the transfer window, will start against Leicester. But beyond that, you might just want to see, if we don't sign anybody, then you might get 2 more Premier League games after him after the international break, if that month-long diagnosis is correct. But I don't think there's going to be any price changes with them. I don't think you really need to move early given that price tag.
Yeah. I mean, the transfer deadline is Friday night, I believe. So
yeah.
You will know before the game week 3 deadline.
Yeah.
And then, I guess, so if you're maybe looking up a game week sort of 6 or 7 wildcard, that he could be a great pick if you actually need someone. Although Barco's price is locked, so you don't have to, maybe not a priority. But so we'll talk about Morgan Rogers now, who, spoiler alert, I've brought in and you have brought in. I was talking to FPL General yesterday, and we put up a table of potential NKUNKU replacements, and his XGI, his total XGI was actually at the bottom of all the options, and he's the one that everyone seems to be buying. So, I guess why is he so appealing?
He was excellent at the weekend, wasn't he, against Arsenal? Just playing in that role, just off Ollie Watkins. Just his running power for. He's big. He's 6'3", I think, Rogers. But he runs with the ball so well, and you had really good holding midfielders like Declan Rice and Thomas Partey, and they just couldn't cope with him. And so I get that from an FPL perspective that some people have said, well, do you want the player linking midfield and attack, running from deep, or do you want that player arriving at the end of it in the penalty box? And I kind of get that, but I think we've seen enough of this role with Emery, this number 10 role that he likes to use, because it was Diaby for a lot at the start last year. We got a lot of returns. I think he's still going to get opportunities. I think he's going to be arriving in the box a little bit later. He's going to be coming for cutbacks, which you'll get from players like Bailey, McGinn if we're using him on the left. And he was unlucky not to return at the weekend, wasn't he? I mean, that Watkins sitter, which he missed in the first half, was put on a plate by Rogers. Watkins scores that probably 9 times out of 10, and Rogers gets the assist. There was a later one where Raya parried one of his crosses into the box, which was dangerous. He scored in our last 3 games at Villa Park last season, playing in a slightly different role, admittedly, but I don't think he's going to be prolific. I will say that, but he's 5 million. With our fixtures, I think he'll tick along. I think in this next kind of block of 5, I think you can get 2 or 3 returns out of him for that. And for 5 million, I think that's going to be really good value.
Yeah, definitely. And if you could ask for a perfect next 4, these would probably be right up there. So just quickly, you touched on him, Leon Bailey. If money was unlimited, would you prefer him? Is he a good differential, do you think?
Yeah, I think he is good. He's brilliant at home, Bailey. So that immediate game week 4-5 fixtures stand out for me. When the Champions League kicks in, he is probably more of the more vulnerable ones, I would say, rather than Watkins. I think that Bailey could be the one that could have his minutes managed a little bit with Philogene coming in at the summer, a very able deputy there. So I think that is something I would be mindful of. I'm a bit more confident of Watkins and Rodgers' durability to be able to play 3 games in a week, whereas Bailey might sit one of those out. It might be Champions League game he sits out. I don't know. I do like him. He's a bit like Watkins. He doesn't feel quite up to speed with his end product at the moment, but that will come with more games and nice differential. I still think I prefer Rodgers, but I've probably got in the back of my mind the price with that as well because there's 1.5 million difference, which is significant, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. All right. Yeah, so great insight there for Aston Villa. And yeah, we're expecting big things over the next 3 or 4 weeks from your boys.
What could go wrong?
And speaking of Villa, we will move on to Tom's Gameweek 3 team, which currently has 2 Aston Villa players in. So I'll read that out for the podcast. Henderson in goal at Chelsea, Trent, Concert and Robinson as a back 3, with Saka, Rodgers, Eze and Smith Rowe in the middle, and then Muniz, Haaland and Isak up front, with Porro, Minter and Quansah on the bench. And you've got the armband on Haaland. So we'll start with your transfer. You've done NKUNKU to Rodgers. You've already explained it mostly, but I guess have you got any plans for the money as well? Maybe looking forward.
Yeah, because I dropped from Solanke to Muniz last week, and then I've dropped again with NKUNKU to Rodgers. I've got 3 million in the bank, so that it was all about kind of prepping for a potential Salah move in game week 4, and I can do that by going from Saka to Salah now. There's zero point 0.5 wiggle room, so if there is a price rise, a couple of price rises, I can still absorb that and still get that player, get Salah in after the international break. So that's kind of all teed up. I'm pretty sure I'll go through with it, but let's kind of see what happens. It just feels like with Saka, with Tottenham and Man City, games he can return in for sure. The Tottenham game's not a bad fixture for Saka away, but it just feels like Salah with those 2 home games against Forest and Bournemouth, isn't it? That it feels like there's all potential there. So.
Yeah, definitely. And then captaincy, I was talking about it again with FPL General yesterday. There's a lot of names in the frame this week. I think Saka, Palmer,
yeah,
Haaland, Salah could all do really well. Isak, I quite like as well.
Yeah.
And Son, to be fair, after his weekend performance, especially if Solanke's out. So are you set on Haaland, or could that change?
It's been on him since I set the team up on Saturday, but I am really looking at Saka as well because I didn't watch it live. I watched the Brighton Man United game back, like extended highlights. It wasn't the full 90, admittedly, but I watched that on Sunday. And I thought Brighton were picked off quite a bit in the second half on the counter attack, and they play this really high defensive line under Hertzler. And having watched Saka at Villa in his role on Saturday, and now he's that kind of outlet on the left, he could get a lot of joy against potentially Hinchelwood at Brighton. So that's quite intriguing. West Ham away is a fixture which Haaland has done pretty okay in, I think, in his past couple of seasons, but you probably take that with a pinch of salt because there's a new manager in there now, isn't there, in Lopetegui? He'll get chances, won't he? I'm sure. But it's just whether I could see Saka outscoring him, I guess. So that's something I've got to think about over the next couple of days.
Yeah, I think that was Haaland's first Premier League game away at West Ham a couple of years ago. I think he scored a brace there.
Did. Can't remember what he did last year, but I mean, he's going to get chances, isn't he, in that team?
Yeah.
So only really those 2, I think. I'm happy to hold Isak. I'm not one of these panicky owners who's thinking of selling him, switching him to Watkins or anything like that. I still think I think he had 5 shots in the box at the weekend at Bournemouth. And I thought he looked the more likely to score than Gordon. And then Gordon, who was pretty quiet, I thought, popped up with that goal. But that could easily be Isak this weekend. And it's quite a high-scoring fixture traditionally, this one, isn't it? So, yeah, I'm happy to back him.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Isak, but you've covered him there. But also Eze. There's a few people getting nervous about Eze, but no one's had more shots this season than Eze. And he's playing Chelsea, who, I'm not afraid to admit it, have looked a little bit questionable at the back. The space that Cunha was getting, like on the cutbacks and stuff, was a bit concerning. Although in the second half we looked better, but yeah, I wouldn't be shocked
Okay.
at all if Eze scored, and I'm guessing he's not a consideration to take out.
No, I think he's been a bit unlucky, hasn't he, so far? I'm probably a bit more concerned about Palace than I am about Eze, just because they haven't looked great in these first two. And I think a lot of people were saying maybe Glasner needs to switch up that system a little bit and freshen it up, because they've lost Elise, of course, and it hasn't looked great. But I think I'm kind of looking at that Leicester fixture in four as well, not just treating this Chelsea match in isolation, but Leicester and Man United at home after that. So I would be surprised if I sell him before a wild card in six. I think he's probably here to stay for a bit longer.
Yeah, yeah. Palace are interesting because it's pretty unsettling there. And if Mark Gahey, like, there's a little bit more chat that's getting a bit closer, but
Yeah.
it's all weird. Like, you make him captain, and then the next day he's going to leave, and he's got a game against Chelsea at the weekend. Yeah. I think once the
Yeah.
window shuts, it might be a little bit more settled there.
Yeah, and I think they looked all right at the weekend, and then I think he took off his holding midfielder, and I think it all fell to pieces a bit after that. And they're linked with Nketiah today, aren't they, as well? That sounds like it's pretty close. So that could hint at a change of system, because obviously he's been playing these two attacking midfielders in between behind Mateta, hasn't he? Mateta's going to keep playing, and if you sign in on Nketiah, he's probably going to play. So maybe they will go for more of like a 3-5-2 or something like that. I don't know, but
Yeah, and then
something to keep an eye on.
yeah, definitely. And then yeah, obviously Dean Henderson in goal. A little bit disappointing.
Mm,
It feels like everyone's got a clean sheet apart from Dean Henderson. I'm sure that's not
yeah.
correct, but it feels like it. Yeah, are you
Mm,
that's a long term hold for you, or is that Leicester at home fixture quite big for him?
yeah, I mean, he hasn't looked great in the second half at West Ham. His distribution wasn't great. So, but it's one of those where I'm not going to make a goalkeeper transfer. I'm just going to ride it through. I only want to spend 4.5. I had Raya in a draft before the season, but I committed to that game week six wild card and then said, well, look, I'm not going to invest in Arsenal's defence. And I said at the time, if they come out with two clean sheets out of five, then I'd be content with that. Now they've already got two out of two. I didn't think they would keep a clean sheet at Villa, but let's see. They've got Brighton can go and score at the Emirates, and of course Spurs and Man City can after that. And they are giving up a few chances, Arsenal. Wolves could have scored in game week one, and Villa should have scored a couple at the weekend. So I'm going to stick to that. Just ride on through with Henderson. Hope he can maybe get one clean sheet out the next two or three, although that doesn't look likely at the moment. And then reanalyze it and go with a fresh keeper on a wild card, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the flip side of that is that Ray is getting save points now, which is
Yeah.
something we maybe didn't factor in before. But yeah, he's got a couple of tough fixtures for Raya after next week.
Mm.
But yeah, and then just finally on the defence, you bench Porro. I'll be honest, I would play Porro over Konsa, but that's just me personally. But
It's that,
is that close?
yeah. It's attacking returns against a potential clean sheet, isn't it? I think because I've been so, I mean, Southampton have been bad these first 2 weeks, but I would argue that Leicester, for me, having watched the Tottenham game and a bit of the game of the weekend against Fulham, I think they've been equally bad, if not worse. Um, I thought defensively we did okay against Arsenal. So Konza's in at the moment. Porro, I'm sure, will concede at Newcastle,
Yeah,
but positions he takes up, he could. I mean, he's not taken as many set pieces this season, which does dent his appeal a little bit. Maddison's come back on and taken hold of those, but he could get something from open play like he did against Leicester. So yeah, I guess that it's not set in stone, and Porro could come in, but I think I'll probably try and target the clean sheet. Um,
yeah. I think I might be playing him over Robinson, to be fair. But yeah, it's
Yeah, and I
close there.
guess yeah, and it is actually they're all away this week, and then it reverts in game week four and looks really strong again. Kwanzaa, I'm going to leave on the bench. The rotation between this four works up until a wild card. I'm just going to have to. He's probably going to drop to 4.3, isn't he? I don't know if you saw the quotes after Tom and Slot kind of said. He said it would have been a more difficult decision had he trained properly and been fit. I don't know if I really believe him, but that's what he said anyway. It wouldn't surprise me if he got a game in the next few, Kwanzaa. I don't think he's just going to be shifted out permanently. But the problem is, it's like NKUNKU. It's that uncertainty. You can't really start him until you know he's going to play, and I don't know if we're going to get that. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, you wouldn't have thought he would just chuck out the preseason because of
no,
145 minutes.
yeah,
And
he
yeah,
was good. Yeah, and he was really good, wasn't he, in pre-season?
yeah. I mean, I've seen people say that United are one of the lowest teams for like long balls and physical duels, so it's actually could be a Quanta game. But yeah, we'll have to see
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. Yeah, if they're still playing that false nine, kind of with Fernandez, that could, yeah, like you say, that could easily be a game. I don't know whether I play him in that fixture, but if he put in a really good display, then that could open him up for game week 4 and 5. So, yeah,
Yeah,
wait and see, I think, for me. But I totally understand if you've sold him or if getting rid. But just with my team, it doesn't make sense, I don't think.
yeah, for sure. Well, thank you very much, Tom. There's going to be plenty of content on the site this week from Tom and Neil as well, including differentials, which may or may not feature a Villa player. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But
Yeah, maybe. It always depends if they go in the scout picks or not, because we're not meant to double up. So I'll have to see what the plan is for that, and then go from there. But yeah, it kind of feels like I need to get someone in, maybe a Tillemans, or in the hope that he's on penalties or something like that. So
yeah, that's another thing. Actually, we need Villa to get a penalty. That
it
might
would be
make
nice to have some
Watkins.
clarity,
Yeah,
wouldn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
Part of me doesn't want Watkins to take them as a fan, because I mean, he has scored before, but he never looks that confident. Um, and Tillemans obviously is playing every week now, and I think he's probably going to get them. But McGinn's may be in there as well. So let's see.
yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for watching the video, everyone. Make sure you give it a like,
Cheers.
subscribe, and if you're listening on the podcast, do give us a 5-star review if you like what you hear. Stay tuned to the site and the socials, and best of luck in Game Week 3.
Cheers, Tom.